All right, upgrade on progress on switching over from my old method of using silicone. I'm going over to you could say this is almost like a urethane, a hard drying silicone that's extremely flexible and extremely abrasion resistant. I'm coating the hoses. So here's the factory OEM hoses right out of the bag. And here they are after I have the coating on them. I tried two different methods. The problem with this, it dries kind of fast, so it sets up while you're working at it. And for those of you who might want a part number, let's see if I have a part number on here for you, because this stuff is really good. It's really good for protecting your shoes and increasing the life of your shoes. So I don't see a part number, but this is it. This is the model. This is what you're looking for. This stuff has so many uses. Once it gets on something here, I mean, where's my razor blade? Oh, so I can put on a razor blade here. But to give you an idea, if you look at the blade, the sharp blade of the, you almost can't cut through this stuff. I mean, it's like I'm pressing into it there. I got it through it, and then the blade pops out and goes over it. So this stuff is extremely resistant to getting cut or punctured. If we look at the thickness of the original, so here's the original. So we're 11.11 millimeters. That's the original thickness. Now, if you look at the thickness after I coated this and I let it hang, get it out here. There you go. Now we're at 13.36 millimeters. That is my film thickness of this stuff. So this stuff it's kind of droopy, and you could see here I had a little break when I hung it up. So what I did was on this one was I hung it up, and by the top, you see how I have over here? This one I hung it up like this, and then put this like holding on something and having to suspend it up in the air. But I had some drooping, and it got messed up in a few places on this one. So I tried a different method. This one I fluid applied this one in a vertical position. So I applied with the caulking gun. This is difficult. I'm not going to do this again because it took so much work. It was very time consuming and very messy. So I applied this in the vertical position on one side, and it flows really slowly over. It goes over like this, and it doesn't quite coat the other side. So what I did was I turned it over 180 degrees, and I applied another bead on the other side in a vertical position. But what I was getting these little icicles of stuff flowing off because it was vertical and it was still flowing. It sets up kind of fast, so then I picked it up and that leveled it out a little bit. So then on my next one, I tried a different method. I applied this when it was in the horizontal, and I just said that backwards. Sorry guys. I applied this in the horizontal method and then hung it up vertical to try to smooth it out. This one I applied in the vertical, hanging up, and then I applied this and just kept going around the hose as I was going to the bottom, and it was like pouring down, following as I was applying this from the top down, and it came out pretty smooth and pretty constant. If you look at this, it's really nice in some places. Now this area, as it was in the vertical and it was still drying after about a half hour later, it broke its outer surface. So it stays liquid underneath. It makes a thin film on the surface, and the vertical pull coming down, see, it was hanging on this end. Yeah, this was the end it was hanging on. And or this end. Shoot, I can't remember. Oh yeah, this end. It was hanging on this end right there, and it snapped the outer skin. So what happened was it pulled back, because this becomes like a rubber band, the outer skin, and the weight was pulling down, and it broke all the way around. And if you look really close, you almost could see it's blue from here to here, because this is the blue hose. And so it kept pulling down, and the outer skin, you could see it right here where it stayed thick, then it's really thin, and then this is where it sprung back up like a spring, and it pulled it back up into itself. So that was a break right there, which was unfortunate. But I'm gonna apply more and then stick the shrink tubing on. But if you look at the thickness, we went from 11.11 millimeters to 13.3 or 4 millimeters thickness. And it's nice uniform thickness until it broke right here, or even there it's thicker, but it's just thin, and it's not 111. It's 1210. So even though you can see through it, we went from the factory thickness of 11.11 to 12.11. So even that thin film added 1 millimeter. So that means on each side it's basically a 0.5 millimeter thickness film of this poly on there. And now you cannot pull it, or it's very difficult to pull. This stuff is really sticky and grippy, so trying to pull it through here would be very difficult. So I'll add some more to act as a lubricant and then pull it through, and it's really messy. But what I did was I took a piece of soft copper and I brazed on one of the ends here to screw on. And what you do is you screw this, and the tape keeps the stuff from sticking to the end there. And if I can hold that with my knee. So you screw that on. So now you have something to hold and pull this with, because it's going to become very difficult. Now if you see how flat this is, okay, you see how flat? You can't pull through this when it's flat like this. It's really difficult. You see it wants to stay flat. Even when you try to open it up, it wants to go back flat. So you don't want it like that. So if you see what I did here was I took this and I flattened it out in the other direction. Let me go back down. So I took this and I flattened it out in the opposite direction, and then I pulled it over something sharp. This is not sharp, but see how I did here? I pulled it over a corner of like a table or a small round tube, and I pulled it tight and I dragged it over, and I forced it to get a second crease. So now it wants to stay open like this. That will make it much easier. Believe me, I discovered this by the first one I made a mistake on. It was a big headache. And I had to abort and stop and pull it back out, and it made a mess everywhere. So you do this. Then you can take this, let's go this way, and you can, and I'm trying to do this while I'm holding the camera in one hand, but now you can put it through here like this. Now you have something long and stiff. That's what she said. Okay, and so I'm pulling this through. As you see right here, I'm pulling it through, pushing it. See how this is going? Okay, so now you're to a point where this is a two people job, and it'll be much easier if you have a second person helping you. You need to get a pair of vice grips, and you're going to have to get a corner of this, and I found a little split helps a little bit, so it opens up, and you could get a pair of vice grips to hold this. You push it inside, which I'm going to have trouble right now because I just messed it up. You add more of the E6000 along the length that you're going to work in, and you do small sections at a time. You have to work fast. Somebody has to get out on the other end. One person is going to pull right here while they hold this. They're going to pull this over. They're going to pull for you Well, you apply with your caulking gun this out here about a foot. You'll work about a foot at a time. Put it down, it's going to make a mess. As you have your vice grips, let's pretend this is the vice grips. You have your vice grips holding here. We're going to want to make a little slit here like this to give you something to hold on. You want to open that up a little bit. You're going to do a little bit more of that, probably about an inch back. Use your vice grips, get it up over this, and start pushing with one hand, pulling with the vice grips with the other hand, somebody helping you at the other end, or somebody applying this right behind you. Your hands are going to get all messy. That's why I said I'm only going to do this on one set of hoses one time, because this turned out to be a lot of work. But I can guarantee you, after you have 2 coats of this over your hoses with the shrink wrap, you will have a lifetime hose that will never fail on you under normal use in a shop. That's all. I'll get back to my progress as I get along and I put the second coat here. Here's how messy it's going to get on your hands, and it's going to take a lot of peeling to get this off here. This was my second time that I was actually successful. The first time I had to pull it back off, but if you look at the thickness of this, this is after putting one more coat on here and then putting it on there. 16.2 millimeters. Here's it before the second coat, and 12.75. And if you want to see the thickness of 2 layers with it thin, 1.07 is just the material thickness doubled up by itself. So you could see we went from the factory 11.11 millimeters to a finished product that is 16 millimeters in thickness. So you definitely have a lifetime hose that won't break down on you. If you've ever had them hit fans and pulleys and they cut your hose, and at $100 for a hose, you know, a set of hoses, would you rather have them last a lifetime or last, you know, a year or a couple months, depending on how long they last you? I'm in mobile business, so I'm always throwing my hoses in and out attached to my gauges all the time, and they're always breaking right here, as they right where in this section where it bends and it flexes. I always get all my failures right here at the ends, and I no longer get that since I've gone to using the shrink tubing. And as you've seen from 2 years ago, I used the silicone method, which is much easier, still preserves, but I think I'm going to go to one of the heavy duty thick abrasion and heat proof shrink tubings. This is just a normal light one, but I think I'm going to stick with the silicone method and just go with a heavy industrial high abrasion resistant thick shrink tubing. So that'll be another video at another time, but I know this hose will definitely last me a really long time. All right, see you guys.